Unfortunately, my tip slide is going to be very short because I think there is a very nice resource that you can use for that I'm not going to have much to add. I'll get to that. But let me actually start by talking a little bit about, not necessarily my research, but really what I think is most exciting in corporate finance, in the area of corporate finance right now, which is broadly right where I do my research. And so that's the title there, and it's interesting because there are a lot of people. I've heard this argument that people saying that there's nothing new in corporate finance. You know, the corporate finance is dead. Like if you look at the NDR corporate finance meeting, for example, it's only household finance paper these days. So maybe there is nothing new in corporate finance, and I think that's actually not true. This is, I think, these are very exciting period to be doing research in corporate finance because, there is this general sense that there is something wrong with firms and markets, and that reflection of that is, I don't know if you probably follow it. There have been lots of politicians talking about regulating corporate finance. I've never seen to such an extent, like Bernie Sanders, for example, is proposing to ban stock repurchase. Warren wants to change the corporate governance. And since I started my career, I've never seen so much interest really in. And then of course there is the Trump tax ban I'm going to talk about in the end. I think that's a great opportunity to do research as well. There is this. I think the good starting point to think about this is the research by Gutierrez and Philippon that suggests that there is some missing investment in the U.S. So there is this evidence, and I'm not going to have time to show graphs or anything, so I'm just going to talk here. There is this evidence that investment has been low relative to Q. And wage growth has been low, productivity growth has been disappointing. So these are sort of basic economic facts. And Philippon actually, they talk about a few possible explanations that have to do with maybe the increase in concentration in industries and maybe some short-termism. So let me talk a little bit about concentration first. This is not necessarily my area. I haven't done much on that front, but I think it's certainly one of the most exciting areas to think about right now. Really what explains there clearly has been an increase in market power in many different industries. There has been an increase in concentration. The question is what explains it, right? So there are some people like Thomas, for sure. I'm sure what he thinks is that there is something wrong. That there is too much concentration. Maybe M&A regulation has been too lenient, and this is a bad thing. There are of course more positive explanations like globalization, technology shock, and I think we're not quite ready to make a call here. What really is going on? Let me just say, Thomas has a new book that is coming up on Amazon. I think it's required reading for everybody. Talking about exactly this issue, how America gave up on free markets. I think this is really very exciting area of research. Is it really true that we have too little competition in the U.S. and in Europe? I think he's talking mostly about the difference between U.S. and Europe. Anyway, I think this really is something to think about. The other area is short-termism. I think short-termism is a very important area to think about as well. This has to do, for example, with Bernie Sanders' ideas. Maybe U.S. companies are focusing too much on the short term, doing repurchase instead of investing, etc. Right? And there are lots of open questions here. I don't think, is it really true that short-termism can help explain this decline in investment? Right? It's really not. It's even not clear to me that we can clearly identify short-termism and what are its sources. So this is something I've done some research on. I'm not going to have time to talk about that. I just put up some references for you. There has been a bunch of papers suggesting that identifying possible causes of short-termism. So possible drivers that increase short-term incentives and affect investment policy. Here's where I think is the most exciting thing is there is some missing evidence. So this is how I think of it. this research basically shows that short-term incentives seem to affect real decisions. But I don't think we have as much evidence on the long-term consequences of this. So if you think about it, the fact that short-term incentives affect investment doesn't mean that really this is short-termism in the way that we think about it, right? That there is a failure, that firms are focusing on the short term at the expense of the long term. The only way we can prove this is by looking at the long term. Okay? So, for example, Gutierrez and Philippon suggest that investor activism may be one of the culprits. Activism has certainly gone up in the U.S. over the years. If you look at the data, there's more activism now than 20 years ago. But then the people who actually have looked at the long-term effect of activism, like the research by Alon Brav and Wei Jiang, actually suggests that there is no, it's not clear that there are long-term consequences. Okay, so that's just an example. This is an area I'm working on. I'm focusing mostly on the repurchase channel. I think, and this goes back to the other question that I was talking about in the beginning, right? Is there a problem with share repurchases, right? So, we also see a time series. If you look at the time series, there has been an increase in stock repurchase, right? And then the question is this really a cause of the problem, or maybe just a symptom? Maybe neither. Maybe there is nothing really to worry about, right? So there's lots of open questions here as well. So Gutierrez and Philippon, for example, they do suggest in their research that the increase in repurchase may be behind some of these problems. But like I said, Brav had all kind of rejected their argument. My research, I'm not going to have time to talk about everything here, but this is an area I'm really interested in. I've been doing some research on whether there is sort of a short-termism repurchase channel, and here the answer seems to be yes. Okay, there is some evidence, I think, that firms are, maybe increasing stock repurchase too much because of short-term incentives, and that might have negative long-term consequences. I'm just gonna leave the papers up there for you to check. But just at the end, this is just one possible channel through which short-termism effect might have long-term consequences. There is a lot of stuff to look at here. Okay, so and then finally there is the tax plan. The tax plan is just is a great opportunity to do research. There is this really major overhaul on the corporate taxation system in the U.S. that I think has to do with this general problem as well. The major goal of this is try to increase investment, right? And spur investment in the U.S. So there is a lower tax rate. Tax rates have become more uniform because multinational firms are paying more taxes now, and maybe smaller firms are paying less taxes because of the way the tax change was structured. So there are lots of questions here. I mean, did the tax plan really help increase investment or not, right? And then, there are changes in multinational taxation that affect things like cash holding. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of research on this. And this is kind of it's just an open area for now. The data is just coming out, right? And I'm sure people are going to jump at this to do research. So in terms of the tips for PhD students, I have one tip, okay? There is a fantastic presentation by Lasse Pedersen that most people are not aware of. So he actually took his time to write a very long presentation about, the title is How to Succeed in Academia or Die Trying. No, have fun trying, right? So this is what I do when I teach my PhD course in Illinois. The first class, that's what I do. I just go over this, highlight a few things. It is self-contained, so everything is written up for you to. So really, the more I think about it, the more I realize that I don't have much to add to this. This is like a complete resort of tips for PhD students, assistant professors, and really everybody. Even I learned sometimes. Even I learned from this. So this is great, a great resource. I pointed out some highlights here. that I'm not going to go over in detail because it's all like in last presentation. Those are just the points that I think are the most important that when I tell my students, but Lasse is talking about all of them. Okay? So, you know, for example, when you write a paper, it's important to think about what is the figure of the paper. Instead of just having tables, think about showing your main result in a figure. You know, things like that. Okay? I mean, I spent like an hour talking about this presentation in the PhD class. I'm not going to have time today. So just look at it. I think it's still available on his website. If not, I'm sure just emailing him, he'll be happy to send it to you. Okay? So thank you. I guess I'll pass it on.
Thank you.